Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to this special session tonight. Give you a little brief of what we're trying to do tonight is that we have two items on the City Council we're going to take care of. And then we're going to, after that, then we're going to have a couple brief statements. And then council members are going to move around the tables as much as possible. And we're going to take input, listen, and come up with ideas. We're not here to, point fingers. We're here to get some more ideas of how we can work to keep the adult center going. And we want to listen to you with your ideas. So would you all please stand and join me in the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Starting with Steve, we need to have a roll call.
Councilor Clark present.
Councilor Thompson here.
Councilor Roddy here.
Councilman Hall there. Mayor Clark present.
Councilor Wolf here.
Councilor Needham here.
All right. We have everyone in attendance. Council, we are going to, we have a new interim city manager, and to finalize it, we need to have a motion to ratify the contract that he's accepted.
Motion to ratify the new contract.
Second.
Have a motion and second to ratify Mark Giravasi's interim city manager contract. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, thank you. Next item we have before you is an ordinance 2012-12, an ordinance extending the franchise granted to Portland General Electric Company. We've been negotiating with PG to renew this franchise agreement. The franchise agreement with PG is scheduled to expire in June of 2012, but to prevent any disruption in service in Molalla and enable the party to continue negotiations, PG and the city agreed to extend their existing franchise agreement through September. With the change in administration and change in the city attorney helping to negotiate the franchise, a year extension is warranted to enable time for new personnel to familiarize themselves with the negotiations to date, which allow the parties to come to agreement. So this ordinance is just an extension of the franchise, or the franchise agreement with Portland General Electric Company, and it's ordinance extending the franchise granted to Portland General Electric. Are there any questions on this ordinance?
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
I had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Barnes prior to her departure, and when we initially requested that it be brought before us at this meeting, we requested a 6-month extension as opposed to the year extension that's actually provided for in the ordinance. Mm-hmm. I asked if we would be able to change that to the 6 months, and she said that we were able to do so. She also suggested that even with the year that we may be able to take it back off of the table, but I would actually like to see it put forward as a 6-month extension. If we need to do another, obviously we can, but that it gives us 6 months. That makes it a little more of a pressing issue as opposed to moving it out for an entire year.
Okay. With agreement from council, you can have the ordinance to a 6-month period instead of a year. Any other questions on it? Yes.
Is there a spokesperson from PG?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any stickling points of why we having a hard time with the city and PG to get this contract going through that I'm unaware of?
Well, going back to the initial discussions for the grant.
Can you go to the microphone?
Oh, certainly.
And we'll need your name and all the good stuff like we normally do.
Good evening, thank you so much. My name is Annette Madsen. I'm with Portland General Electric. My business address is 121 Southwest 7th Street, Portland, Oregon 97204. As was mentioned, the franchise contract was set to expire in June of 2012. I first approached City Manager Atkins in June of 2010 to see if we could start negotiations at that time. We had some time to go. City Manager Atkins told me he would get back to me about that, and basically at that point it was not a priority with other city business. And then, of course, he announced his retirement, and so it seemed appropriate to wait to start with the negotiations until a new city manager was brought on board. Ellen and I met in February initially about this, and I sent her the first draft of the contract. It was not too long after that, as I recall, that there were some issues with finances in the city came up, and that became the most urgent matter that the city had to deal with. We continued our negotiations in this summer after the first extension was passed, and I got information back from Ellen with a number of edits in September. I was not able, due to my workload, to get back to her until October. And then we met on October 31st, went through a number of items. We've reached consensus on some matters, but there are still some areas where we're a little ways apart as far as our mutual agreement for operating in the right-of-way and the terms on that. So is our mutual agreement that with your city manager leaving and with a change in attorney, that there was a question, would an interim city manager be comfortable stepping into those negotiations when we are already so far down the road? Would a new attorney want to start over from scratch? We don't really know. But we're hoping that we can continue with where we're at. I was talking to Mayor Clark before this meeting. He has had some conversations with your interim city manager, and I understand he is very anxious to pick up where we're at right now, and I'm very excited to hear that. I had discussed with your city manager, with City Manager Barnes, that your extension seemed appropriate with as much change as you were going through. Usually an interim city manager does not want to get into franchise negotiations, but with the fact that your incoming interim manager does, in that case, if you're more comfortable with a 6-month extension as opposed to a 1 year, I think that makes a lot of sense, and Portland General Electric would certainly agree to that.
Okay, one more question. You said you already had a contract,
Mm-hmm.
and it was given to Ellen, and you said there was edits on it?
There is your existing contract right now. Back in February, we have a new template. That contract is 20 years old. There's been some changes in the
Okay.
law, the boilerplate language the attorneys like to see. So I sent her an initial draft back in April, which then she and your public works director, the attorney looked at. They made some suggestions for their edits. When I got that, our folks looked at it and said, okay, we can agree to these things. No, we can't agree to these other things. And that was, again, the gist of the conversation that Ellen and I continued on October 31st. But we do still have some points that we have not reached agreement on.
Okay, just to finish this question off, is this the same contract with the correction, so to speak, or the agreements that you're going to give to the interim
Yes.
city manager? Okay, thank you.
One question, and Ms. Penny, can you remind me again when it is that we receive the annual payment?
March.
March. So under the current contract, we receive an annual payment of the franchise fees that normally occurs in March. Under the extension, is there any reason to expect that that would change, or would we still receive the payment in March?
With the extension, we would still pay you in March. The payment is due by April 1st of each year. We pay that franchise fee in advance. So, say March 29th, for example, of this coming year, you would receive the payment for 2013 for the use of the right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
You still want to see 6 months? I mean, you're going out a year. If the agreement comes together in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, it can be ratified.
I would like to see it for 6 months personally. I think that makes it a little more of a little closer on our radar than putting it out for a year and then perhaps a year from now we find out with it. We still have quite a bit of work to do on it. So I'd like to make a motion that we amend ordinance number 2012-12 to reflect a 6-month time frame.
Second.
We have a motion second to ratify the ordinance 2012 to 6 months until November. Any questions? Motion second to ratify that part. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so be it. Okay, then before you, with the ordinance, it would just be moved out 6 months from tonight.
And I'd like to make the motion that we adopt ordinance number 2012-12 as amended.
I need a motion to read with,
Excuse
as an ordinance, it's a little different than a resolution. Ordinance to have a first reading.
I make a motion we have a first reading of ordinance number 2012-12 as amended.
Second.
A motion second to have a first reading of ordinance 2012-12. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. I need a motion to read the second reading for
Make a
ordinance.
motion. We have a second reading of ordinance number 2012-12 as amended.
Second.
A motion second to have a second reading of ordinance 2012-12. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now I can take a motion.
Make a motion we adopt ordinance number 2012-12 as amended.
Second.
We have a motion second to adopt ordinance 2012-12 with amendments made as an ordinance extending the franchise granted to Portland General Electric Company. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. We have the extension
you.
that will be for 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
Certainly.
Okay. With that, before we adjourn this meeting and go to the town hall meeting, would like to remind everyone that with the help of a lot of volunteers and the city crew, there will be a Christmas tree lighting. We will have the Christmas tree is up and I think it's ready to go. But on Saturday evening at starting at 5 o'clock, we will have our singing and the official lighting of the Christmas trees. I'd like to invite everyone to that over there in front of City Hall starting at 5 o'clock. Again, motion to adjourn the council.
We were gonna have Heather do.
She's going to talk.
Oh, okay, motion to close the business meeting.
Second.
We have a motion second to adjourn the business meeting, Molalla City Council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are going to go to the town hall. Heather Penny, our finance director, is going to go to the microphone.
Well, there are forms that might be easier. Do
Yeah.
you guys want to go out to the tables? So as we're talking, they can see the forms you have?
Can.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so we are going to, those of you that are around, we're going to move you, try to move to a table. We're going to try to get as many city council members out there. We're going to have a note taker at each table. And then you're going to have a spokesperson at each table. And after about 20 minutes, I'm going to see where we're at. And 25 to 30, we'll listen to these spokespeople. We'll go from there. Jim? Come by a couple times. New interim There's some empty tables up here.
This work.
If you would like to come up and fill out these tables up here.
I need more.
For the folks sitting back in the chairs, we have 3 tables up front that are going to have counselors around them. Please come to a table with a counselor if you can.
Again, we have an empty table up here for anybody who'd like to come up with Councilman Wolf. And there's some more room over here.
I'll go over there.
I'll go over there.
Here, I'll do this.
Okay, again, discussion time. And but Heather has some information and she will explain some of that information to your table. How's that sound? Ready? All right, Heather will explain some and then move around from table to table to answer questions.
I will be available and I will be floating the room. I'm not going to sit at a table, so I'm going to float to answer financial questions. So as I come around your table, feel free to shoot anything you've got at me. Your first form is going to look like this. The council at your table should have this form. What this form tells you is it starts in July 2010 and it goes through current. The blue line shows you the revenues received by the Adult Center. The red line shows you the expenditures. Nowhere in a 2-year period do revenues exceed expenditures except for when we transfer from the general fund. You will see 2 large spikes. Those large spikes are in November. We make 1 bulk transfer from the general fund when we receive our property tax. There are 2 other notes. If you look in August 2012 and October 2012, those 2 months are the exception where revenues are greater than expenditures because in both of those months we received the $25,000 contribution from MCC. Your counselor should also have a form that looks like this. It's green and gray. The numbers in the month with the green columns, those are actual numbers. Those are months that are closed with the exception of November's not quite closed. But those are actual revenues and actual expenditures. The gray column are us forecasting or projecting where we anticipate the fund being at June 30, 2013. We are anticipating, if everything stays static, ending the year about $5,000 in the red, and that will eat the entire $40,000 contingency in the Adult Center budget. So these forms are available for you guys to be looking at and talking at your table. How we got the numbers in gray. If you're wondering how we're forecasting, we went back and looked at last fiscal year, which is completely closed and audited. And we get an average in each particular line item for the year. Then I look at the 5 months of this year, add them all up, take an average. Are they in line with what I saw for last year? If they are, then I take that average number and plug it into the projections and it carries out. There are going to be fluctuations. You can never hit it on the mark. Where I did estimate high is in the revenues from Clackamas County. The Adult Center has been going through an audit with Clackamas County, which has slowed down their reimbursements to us. So if I measure only what we've received to date through the end of October, we have not received our full reimbursement and we would not have a fair representation of the revenues. So I went back and used last fiscal year revenues to project going forward. Does that all make sense? Everybody with me? Yes?
Why did the county slow down the payment?
They're in the middle of an audit. It's just what people do when they're in the middle of the audit. State does the same thing. They're doing it with state revenue sharing. If I could explain county, I'd be a wizard. Okay. What I wanted to make sure was that the numbers we were looking at were not anomalies. We don't have something going on this year that is unique and specific to only this year. So I went back to fiscal year 2010 and 2011. And here's where we're starting to run into our concern. Without the transfer from the general fund, and that transfer from the general fund is 100% property tax. Without the transfer from the general fund, those 2 big spikes on that first form we looked at, the Adult Center brings in about $12,700 in revenue a month and spends about $27,100 a month. We have a $1 in revenue to a $2.50 expenditure. So then I want to look at the next fiscal year. Is that unique to 10 and 11? So I look at fiscal year 11 and 12. Without the general fund property tax transfer, average revenues are $13,800 a month with an average expenditure of $32,700. I'm seeing the same trend of a $1 revenue source to a $2.50 expenditure. So without the subsidy from the general fund, which is property tax dollars, which raises our concern that property tax dollars are taken from City of Molalla residents. And the adult center is being subsidized with those property tax dollars to serve a 35 square mile radius that the adult center by contract must serve. So the question is that an appropriate use of property tax revenues?
What about all us seniors that don't have children in school? The heavy taxes that we pay for all these sports games, transportation, and other wasted money is not fair to seniors. And the seniors, if they don't have some way to connect with each other, some of these people that have good pensions will die, and they will not be able to contribute to the city area of Molalla economy.
And I don't disagree with you. I can't speak to or have an opinion about what happens in the school district. What I can say is that that's a very valid point, and you're going to have a counselor or a mayor at your table, and those kind of discussions need to happen with the legislative body at your table, and we need to find some solutions, because you are right. There is a need in this community, and what happens here is incredibly important. What I'm saying to you is, as a city, we can't afford it. So we need to come together as a community and find some solutions. Just a second, Counselor.
Heather, can you explain the advantage if a private nonprofit was to, run the adult center in comparison to the city, and the responsibility as far as service areas and stuff like that?
Absolutely. How we kind of got here, to do it in a nutshell. Federal government decided they were going to come in and they're going to help senior services. They're going to do all these programs and everything's going to be great. Here's all the rules. Here's all the mandates. They got into it and went, holy cow, we can't afford it. And they shoved it down to the state. State said, okay, we'll take it. And here come all the federal mandates with it. State did it for a little while and went, oh, can't afford this. They shoved it down to the county. County tried it on for a little while. Guess what county figured out? They can't afford it. So they shoved it down to the city. So now the cities are stuck with these federal mandates. Because we are a government entity, we are required to follow all of those federal mandates, the state mandates, and the local mandates that are required for senior services. If a private party comes in and accepts the RFP contract, the contract from Clackamas County, and they are a private, nonprofit, non-government entity, they are not under the same rules and restrictions that we are with service requirements. They can ask for donations. They are not required to pay certain wages. They won't have PERS. They are not required to be government employees. If you look at the expenditures of the Adult Center, if you look at the expenditures of any fund across the board, what's costing you money is the people. That's right. It is the people and the benefits. So if you get into a position where it's the services that are important to you, we've got to figure out something as a community that gets it out of the government hand.
What's the standard in other cities? What's going on?
It's really varied right now. I talked to the finance director in Bend, and Bend has just closed their entire senior center service. They have put it back on the county in Bend, trying to find some solutions down there, and they're really in a quandary. They're very similar to us, and they have the core of the town, and they've got a lot of folks that live in those outer areas that need help. They need the contact, they need the people contact, they need the food, they need help.
So is there numbers ran with a nonprofit running it, or the way it's ran now? Is there numbers in comparison to those?
That depends on who steps forward. That depends on who says I want to do it and what their status is.
Well, you could have a bare bones budget, you think.
Well, I mean, my bare bone budgets are I don't know. I mean, the books are open. If a private entity wants to come forward, I would love to go through the books with you.
When I called all the city council candidates, one of them, and I can't remember which one, said that 2 or 3 years ago, the amount of money from the city was lots lower, like half of what it is now. What was the change?
I actually don't know that I've seen that in the books for probably about 3 to 4 years. What I've seen is we've gone from about 182 to 186 to 190,000 to 195,000 last year. Where it dropped was this year. The general fund is only slated to contribute 64,000 because we have the $100,000 donation from Molalla Communications. That $100,000 donation comes quarterly and has, you know, we're not just going to get the blank money. We have to be open for business. We have to be open for that quarter. It comes quarterly, and it is for 1 year only. Go ahead, Counselor.
I think it was on a longer, maybe a longer scale than 3 or 4 years, and I believe we've had that discussion before, that initially the money we were getting from county in comparison to what we were spending in order to run the operation, it wasn't outrageous.
Absolutely.
And over time it's grown astronomically, in part due to materials and services increasing, but also in part due to the personal services, PERS increases and those types of things.
Absolutely. And that's just for the adult center. That's across the board. The economy took a real dump in 2008. Anybody that had an IRA or a pension in 2008 needed heart pills. I mean, it was not a good year. It hasn't recovered very well. And what we're looking at as far as the demographic and what the needs are very different today than they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this was a full building. There were classes, there were activities. The needs of the seniors in our area have changed from what they were 10 years ago. We have a whole boomer generation that's joining that is a completely different demographic, and their needs are completely different. So I pose to you the question of, our focus has been, how do we keep this center open? When maybe what our question needs to be is, how are we meeting the needs of the seniors in our community? And can the dollars that we're spending or that we're utilizing be spent in a more effective way to reach more people? It's not about the building. It is about the people.
What's our timeline on the way it's ran now?
Well, our timeline of where we're running right now is Molalla Communications contribution runs out, and they will not be helping us past June 30. They've been exceptionally generous with $100,000. When I trend the numbers out, we end the year in a deficit. It is against the law for a fund to end in a deficit. So we have some decisions to make, and we don't have a whole lot of time. Counselor.
In as much as your question about...
Sorry, Jim, I see you back there.
Really?
In as much as your question about a nonprofit and what they could run it at, there's nonprofits function differently. So we have an organization like the Rotary that all of the money that they bring in goes back into the community, and then you have others where you have people that are drawing a salary and those types of things. So as a bare bones, if we looked at just the materials and services costs, $87,000. If the nonprofit organization came in and was run entirely with volunteers, it'd be about $87,000.
This gives us a jumping off point to look at, I think, a little bit.
Counselor Needham.
Okay. When we approved the budget, we had a balanced budget.
Yes, we did.
We approved sharing the administration of this facility with the swimming pool.
Correct.
To further reduce our costs.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying that what has transpired between June and now causing us to arrive at this $5,000 deficit
Absolutely.
is entirely because of the county?
No, it is not entirely because of the county. There are a lot of factors that are involved where we're not meeting our budget requirements. This budget was developed in August with an anticipation that the director would be half adult center and half aquatic center by fiscal year end of last year. Management did not pull the trigger on that until the end of July. I'm already a month into my new fiscal year, and then the outgoing director had her accrued liabilities, her vacation, and everything that needed to be paid off. So we went into the year with our director budget at 30% exhausted by the end of July. The revenues from Clackamas County we will get.
And then I think we also had increased costs for insurance, if I'm not mistaken.
It wasn't the insurance that came in. There was an audit from 2 old employees that were employees from the Adult Center from 1992 to the year 2000 that applied for their PERS benefits. They were part-time employees, and it was found that they were not having their PERS contributed as they were supposed to, and the city had to put it all back in one lump sum, and it was about $6,000. This happens, and let me just clarify that. A budget is a best guess. When you're budgeting at home, I would love to budget $5,000 to take my kids to Disneyland for Christmas. So if all year long I'm trucking along, but I'm not putting any money and the revenues of my paycheck isn't coming in like I'm supposed to, I don't get to go to Disneyland. Just because I budgeted for it doesn't mean I can spend it. The budget and expenditures are there if the revenues come in like they're supposed to. And when the revenues aren't coming in like they're supposed to, we can't spend the money. We also budgeted very heavily that there would be a lot of community involvement, a lot of fundraising, and the donations would come in. I'm 5 months into the year and I'm not seeing the trend. I can't hear you.
I'm wondering if you're looking at closing this center because of the deficits that were found in the city budget. There's well over $1 million deficit. So is that having a ramification on you're considering of closing this?
That's actually a really good question. No, it's not. When you do municipal budgets, it's very different than our home budget. I get my one paycheck, it comes into my checking account, that pays all my expenditures. Municipal budgeting is very different. Think of it like a whole bunch of honeypots. And each honeypot has its revenue and expenditures in it. And if one honeypot empties out, I can't go over to another honeypot and still their honey. I just have an empty pot. So to figure out how to fix that, there are budgetary laws and rules where we can do loans, where the water plant has been known to loan money to the general fund to get us through the end of the year. That has to be documented, it has to go by resolution, and it has to be paid back with interest. So the money that's in the Adult Center's honeypot is the Adult Center's money. It cannot be taken to fund the general fund. Where a concern arose last year was the introduction of a cost allocation plan. That was new. The city had spent a lot of years functioning with its administrative department that handled legal, accounts payable, payroll, all these kind of administrative duties for all the different departments of the city. They were not billing out the cost of the people and the time and the facility to do those events to the different departments. They were just being fully absorbed by the general fund, with the exception of the Adult Center and the library that were paying a small contribution to the city administrator and the finance director's salary. Other than that, those services were provided for free. We are no longer in a position where we can do that, not just for the Adult Center, but for any fund. So all funds now participate in what's called a cost allocation plan, and depending on how much your fund is budgeted, you contribute a percentage of that back to the administration for the administration of your department. There's an awful lot of time that goes into budget, Oregon budget law, the forms with the county, payroll, human resources, legal. I mean, it all comes over there to administration, and there's a cost associated with that. I'm going to stop and turn the time over now. I've yapped enough. I'm going to make rounds. Please feel free to ask me anything. What we are looking for from you, and what we need more than anything, is we need to know how to help you. We need to know what your needs are. We need to know how to best help the seniors in our community. And we need to change our focus from how do we keep this building open to how do we help the seniors. Maybe the answer is keeping the building open, and we have to find a way. I don't know that. But what the legislative body needs to hear at these tables is what you need and what your ideas are on how we can make it happen. Because the truth of the matter is, the honey pot is empty.
All right, so we're going to let you, hopefully have somebody take some notes. Take your notes, and we'll start out at 20 minutes and see how we're doing, and we'll be around to the table, and then we'll add the minutes if we need them. Okay, thank you. Do you need paper to take notes?
Our county is spending a lot of minerals and timber that they're not allowing to be produced. Something's got to give.
All right, what we want to do now is we're going to try to give each table a chance to, and I hope you took good notes because we're going to gather all these notes. And you let Steve right over there?
Can I copy it?
Okay, Steve. But we're going to gather up all your notes, and we're going to try to compile them so we have an idea, but we're going to let each table speak. Hope you have your spokesperson ready. I'm going to walk around with the microphone, but I think Melissa had one comment you wanted to make first.
Yeah, on top of thanking everyone for coming out tonight, I know it's late and it's our winter season and it's cold. And if you guys haven't seen me or met me yet, my name is Melissa Georgeson. I oversee the Adult Center and the Aquatic Center. I've been with the city for 5 years, so I feel very privileged to be here. Like Heather indicated earlier, I've been here since August this year, so it's only been a few months, so still kind of getting my feet underneath of me. Nearly all of my staff is here, and I know that you guys have seen them, but Dennis and Tammy and Penny are in the back. And I need to peddle our entertainment books. I know it's really shameless of me to do it here, but it's our internal fundraiser. These are $30 made payable to the city of Molalla. And then in your memo line, you can put Adult Center, or you can give us cash. But we have several of these to get rid of, and they are good in the Portland metro area. There's coupons for down here as well, so you can look through them and see if there's anything that you need in there. But if you use these, it will pay for itself. So please look at it if you're interested. We would love to sell a few tonight. And so as Mayor Clark said, we're going to get this going. So have your speaker ready, and we're going to start around the tables.
One more thing about events or announcements.
Okay, can we listen, please?
The bazaar on Saturday.
Hold on, you guys.
Okay.
Listen up!
Okay.
The bazaar here.
The bazaar is here on Saturday, starting at 9 a.m. 9 to 3.
Lunch from 11 to 2.
Come and eat and buy lots of goodies.
Yes.
All right. All right, here we go. We're going to start right here with Mayor Lepp.
Thank you. I'm not sure. Okay, this table, a couple of the ideas were to divide the $4 fee that goes to the pool and split it between the pool and the adult center. Another idea was to take the park and rec fee and split it and or move it over to the adult center. The needs that people at the table say they have are transportation to doctors and shopping, better meals, a safe place to socialize, more activities, community entertainment, resource center, medical hardware loaning, social resources, and meeting place for city council and town hall. Thank you.
Okay, you will give your notes to me that we can read. I'll give them to Melissa. George, you're ready, I can tell. In a few words.
Okay.
I think I'd like to get up and speak. Is it on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody know who I am?
Yep.
No.
No.
Lucky guy. It's on, George.
You asked.
City Councilman Paul. Tactful as can be. Things that these fine folks at this table brought up was the biggest question was about the monies that come in doesn't actually just take care of Molalla. It goes out to 35-mile radius. That was a major concern. Churches need to be involved and work together. Well, there's a couple other things in there, like negativity, council and staff. I'm sorry, I really am. We'll work on it. We need to get the baby boomers involved. In other words, have more activities and stuff for them to want to come here again. Okay? That goes on down. Other services,
Poker club here.
to come into the center here, have like an outreach program. Okay. Okay, another thing is Molalla does not have a convention center. Right? So why couldn't we use the adult center? Okay? It's rent $50 per hour, and if you use the kitchen, that's another $60 for flat rate. So maybe they need a publicist to help bring the funds in and get this place rented out. Convention center meeting place, and then another individual, I guess it's the same lady right here, 475 split 2 ways. Did I cover it all? Stand by.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Get your notes there, Mr. Note Taker. Good luck. We're gonna need somebody to decipher all this. Put George's name on it so you can read it. Ready here?
Not really.
Right, George's name.
Hard to go
Oh.
left.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
All right, I'm Dennis Wolf. I'm a counselor. This table came up with the idea, it's written 3 times, privatize, privatize, privatize. They want to utilize seniors to teach with the kids. They want to see child care for seniors who are watching grandchildren. More donations, more bazaars, more fundraisers. Getting away from the Bateman contract and maybe looking at the school district to prepare food and deliver to the adult center as they do to the Molalla area schools. And they are looking for all churches to come together and run the center to provide the services. They want government out of the adult center.
Yeah.
Keep running then.
This table says ditto.
Nah, that's
Jason Griswold, City Council elect. Our table here came up with rental of the facilities, also energy and sustainability audit, and lastly was a change to community center to appeal to a wider base, kind of like the ditto, yeah. Right.
For me, you're not letting Pastor Dale speak, right?
I'm afraid to speak.
I keep you one thing I understand.
Okay, we were talking about the sustainability of funding and services. We need to have services and funding that are sustainable, that we don't have to worry about being cut off when the government has to cut expenses or their budget doesn't cover the expenses. We were talking about a central facility for distribution of services. That was something that was brought up at the Livability Summit that was held here not too long ago, when they were talking about having a central facility for provision of social services. And senior services, of course, are something that are associated with social services. Also, we were talking about partnership with community organizations. And one of those organizations are the various faith-based organizations in the community, and we also have community service organizations. And if we could develop partnerships with those organizations to provide volunteers, that would reduce the need for a lot of funding. We used to have over 300 volunteers at this adult center. I don't know what happened to them all, but
They're in heaven.
I'm sure that all of the volunteers that are working for this adult center will be in heaven. And the more we have, the more we'll go, but not so soon. So I think that's about it, unless somebody has something they'd like to add. Did I cover just about everything that we were discussing?
I'll be more specific.
Okay.
Stand up.
Just to be more specific, I think we talked about the need for a separate 501c3 organization to take the responsibility away from the city and then partner with the community. Again, you already said you take the government out of it. It should be the community's responsibility to take care of their seniors. And so I think that's a worthy cause, and I think it's enough to rally people around and rally a community around and develop partnerships that could cover the funding, but it needs to be a separate 501c3 organization so that you can have a stable place for people to send the funding to, an organization that people would trust, and make it happen, make it work. So there you
All right, we had a few ideas. More grant writing. More grant writing. Should have a lot of available funds that way. Increase PR, public relations, advertising in the local paper, and just trying to sell the need for the adult center to the community and the citizens of Molalla. Asking more for donations, making sure that the nonprofit adult group has a strategic plan so grants get approved. Flooding the paper with letters of need. I mean, we can do our NPR as individual citizens just through letters to the editor. We can fill that paper and you know, get the message out. Ideas of cooking our own meals here at the adult center, possibly saving money that way, and keeping the federal revenue that we get for the Meals on Wheels outside of the adult center, and actually charging a fee if possible through the rules for meals served here at the adult center. Looking into the Kaiser facility, somebody mentioned that they are quite sustainable down there and have a lot of great things going on down there, so that maybe we need to check in and see what they're doing, and because they must be doing it right. Yeah, they're all volunteer. Looking for endowments, rent the building more, splitting fees from the water bill, as mentioned before, and raising membership dues.
Okay, this group back here wasn't really taken. You guys have more to add? Anybody back here would be glad to open it up. Again, I'm really impressed with the way people come together, and in Molalla we've talked about that the people really do come together. You guys came here with a great cause and concern for our adult center. I've been here for 23 years almost, and I became of age to use the facility, but I've tried to come in here a lot, you know, from Lola's time to everybody else, and it is a great facility. As Steve's table was saying, a lot of letters. I think another one is, how's our congressmen? You know, they're the ones that say, you know, these are the mandates, but, you know, pressure them, you know, instead of asking them how they're doing this and that, you know, put some pressure back on them. You know, our mandates are too hard to keep things going with what you want done. Before we close here, I would look for any last questions or comments. Yes?
Yeah, it'd be helpful if we could know what the mandates that are difficult to meet are, so that we can write our congressmen and ask them to look into them.
Good idea. We have to provide services that we cannot ask for payment.
Yeah. We provide services, again,
One of the most difficult mandates that we face that affects our bottom line is there are services that we are required to provide that we cannot charge for. We can ask for a donation, But if they don't want to or cannot pay, we cannot deny the service. So if someone out in Colton needs a ride up to OHSU to get their medicine and they cannot afford it, the center pays for it. And if it can't go by a volunteer driver, it goes by taxi. And that's very expensive. We cannot put those costs back onto the seniors. So there are services that are really quite expensive, and as gas goes up and cost goes up, our charges go up, and we cannot require those receiving those services to make payment. We can ask for a donation. That gets real expensive.
That's just one.
That's just one, but that's one of the types of mandates. If you look in the Senior Citizens Act, it is a federal government act. It will spell out for you many of the requirements that local government must provide and cannot charge for. They can only ask for a donation.
Other questions? Jim?
Just a closing remark. Can everybody hear me? I'd just like to thank everybody that came in tonight for your dedication and your concern for the Adult Center and the services provided to our seniors. And I would like to ask if there's any possibility that all of the people that are here tonight could be kept in the loop on what the decisions from the council and area authorities are making in regard to what's going to happen to the Adult Center.
The council will be presented with it. They're going to see this, I think, come into the January meeting with the new councilors on board, the new mayor. It's going to be one of their first hard decisions to look at. But I think with the ideas here, they're going to explore some of these ideas. That's what tonight was about, was to see is there other ways to help fund this and explore these, and they're all going to be presented to council as a whole and see what we can do. Jimmy?
I guess I don't need a mic. I'm Councilor Thompson. One of the major things that was mentioned was privatization or looking at a 501c3. So we've talked about writing our congressman. We've talked about writing letters to the editor. If you know anybody that's in a 501c3, let's talk to them. See if we can get them involved, because that's what we need in order to privatize it. If that's what we want to do, which gets them away from the government mandates, we need to have a 501c3 at the table prepared to take it over. And so far as I'm aware, we don't have anybody that's willing to really have that conversation.
I think we can have more of those conversations, but again, we're going to have to go ahead.
Yes, you're not. Oh, I'm Pat Torson. If you have another organization taking over it, then you're under another organization. So what's the difference?
The mandate, the government rules,
Well,
the Fed.
yeah, but it's still they're controlling.
No. There's not a requirement for. Sorry, I'll stand up. The personnel cost. So one of the things that was mentioned was having somebody come in and prepare our food. Well, we have to have somebody certified because we're a government entity. They have to have a certification. We have to pay wages. We have to pay PERS. We have to pay all these different costs. We have to have a director here. We have paid staff that we have to compensate for being here. So as was asked on what the difference between having a 501c3 come in and run the operation as opposed to the city, the personnel costs go away. Essentially, the organization could be run for about the $90,000 a year of materials and services, plus whatever overheads the 501c3 brought in with them. And basically, a volunteer organization or a nonprofit organization is going to operate the center more efficiently than what the city can because of the requirements that are placed on the city.
Yes. Would title to the city then go to this 501c3?
I'm sorry?
The title to this building, does that go over to them also?
Well, so the city has an arrangement with the, sorry, the city has an arrangement with the school district. For example, our library, the school district owns that facility. We pay $1 a year to rent it. I can't speak for the rest of council, but I think that there would be probably some interest in if there was a 501c3 that was willing to come in and run the operation, we could come up with some sort of a rental agreement that would basically allow them to do so. where the city could maintain ownership of the building, but they would have a building to operate out of.
Councilor Needham?
Councilor Clark was pointing out that one of the suggestions from this table was to increase the dues. The dues that he was talking about, I believe, are the dues that are paid to Molalla Area Seniors. Molalla Area Seniors is a 501c3 organization, and they are already in place. They have a board of directors that assist in running the adult center. If that's something that should be kept in mind here, is that we already have that organization, and perhaps if they have some help, then they could take over the center.
We have a statement. It's on.
I apologize. I should have introduced our board members earlier. Pat Cronin is here. She's our acting president, secretary, and treasurer for the Molalla Area Senior Board, and they are a 501c3. So the board is available to help us apply for any grants that the city couldn't apply for and get because we're kind of a for-profit, and that excludes us from several grants. So the board is, I think, a little low on membership. I think we have a few spots to fill, and so
treasurer. I'm a secretary now.
Right. Lola's back helping us. Thank you, Lola. And the bazaar this weekend is due in large part to Lola and the team that she has rallied to volunteer all the time to get that bazaar off the ground. Big kudos to them. We need more of that. We approached the board several months ago and we posed that question. You guys are a 501c3. Would you be willing to take over the adult center? The answer was no.
And Pat said we were willing to work with somebody. She said
Yes.
she would not run it herself.
Yes.
But she's willing to talk to whoever wants to help.
Right.
And
So
they
the
can
board
use
is
the 501c3.
the board is willing to help, but they are not willing to take it over. And we asked that question twice.
If they
And
have
if
a
the-
professional
Well, that's
administrator,
because we don't have the capability of running that. We don't have the skills that it takes. I don't know all the rules and that sort of thing. I need
So we need a
somebody with a
professional.
business background to come in and run that sort of thing. I'm willing to help, but I can't do that myself,
Yeah.
personally. I'm not physically or
I think that's a true statement. I mean,
educationally
It is.
qualified. I'm not qualified.
that'd be a really tough assignment for the senior board to try to take it over. Again, expertise and having more of a church group or something, or all the churches coming to agree to that, where they have people on staff that work with that type of arrangements, and they understand how to get meals out. They know how to help the people in different organizations in different ways, and they can apply for grants that way too.
Yeah. This center is amazing. In the time that I've been here, I've met a lot of awesome people. Some were over at the pool first, and then I came over here, and they were over here too, and that was cool. My employees are slammed. We had severe cutbacks here. Penny is attached to a phone. If I could super glue a phone to her ear, it would still not help her take all of the calls from the people that need the trips. Penny gets yelled at on a weekly basis for being unable to provide a ride. Okay?
Yeah.
And the staff does all of the cleaning of this whole facility, the bathrooms, the floors, everything.
I mean, this staff is incredible here. It looks like they have a lot of people, but just like Melissa said, some people are just on the phone all day.
There's 3 people.
Yeah,
There's
3 people to run this place.
2.5. There's 2.5.
So we don't even have 3, and that's part of it. But we could talk about that all night too. That's another whole topic. But I think we got an awful lot accomplished tonight. Melissa has the notes. We're going to compile them. That are going to be presented again to council at a public meeting. You will all be invited again to listen to what they've come up with. We'll look at some figures again and see some of the ideas that have come in, and see which ones way best for the city and for the adult center itself. But any other statements or comments before I move?
Could when there's a decision made at all, could that information come to the senior center so the people involved will know what's going on with it?
It would be, well, even at every time that they are, but as soon as the council comes to, okay, we're gonna bring this up, it'll be on the agenda, this item is on the agenda, and it will be presented, somebody at the adult center will say on January whatever, they're going to discuss the adult center again. Okay? Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming in tonight. I hope you'll all come and use your Christmas voices on Saturdays. Even you, George. Thank you so much.